Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak to you about a mystery that many wrestle with but few truly understand. Why does God isolate you before He blesses you? There is a divine principle hidden in the pattern of isolation, and if you understand it, you will no longer resist the season of loneliness. You will embrace it. When God is preparing to do something significant in your life, His first act is often to call you away from the crowd. He separates you not because He has rejected you, but because He has selected you. Separation is the signature of divine preparation. God never anoints in the open until He first refines in the secret place. You see, promotion without preparation is a curse. Visibility without maturity is dangerous. Therefore, God in His wisdom hides you, shields you, and sometimes even allows you to be misunderstood. All because He is protecting the future He placed within you. The tendency of humanity is to crave acceptance, to seek validation from others, to want to be seen and affirmed. But God knows that if you depend on public affirmation for your identity, you will collapse under the weight of public responsibility. Before David ever wore a crown, he wore the loneliness of the pasture. Before Joseph wore a royal robe, he wore the garments of a slave and a prisoner. Before Moses led a nation, he lived hidden in a desert for 40 years. These were not seasons of abandonment. These were seasons of preparation, seasons of detoxing from Egypt, seasons of training for responsibility, seasons where character was chiseled and conviction was born. Isolation strips you from dependencies. It removes the crutches you have leaned on for too long. It exposes the idols of your heart, the need for applause, the addiction to affirmation, the fear of rejection. It is only in isolation that you are forced to deal with the core of who you are, without the distractions of the crowd. In isolation, you no longer hear the opinions of men. You hear the whisper of God. In isolation, you no longer perform for acceptance. You posture yourself for obedience. It is there in the secret and silent places that your roots grow deep enough to sustain the fruit you are destined to bear. God knows that the blessing He has for you requires a foundation that is stronger than public opinion. He knows that when He opens the door, the same people who celebrate you today may criticize you tomorrow. If you are not fortified in isolation, you will crumble under the shifting winds of human opinion. That is why He isolates you. To teach you that your source is not the applause of men, but the approval of God. You must understand that in every story of divine elevation, there is first a story of divine separation. Abraham was called to leave his father's house before he could become the father of nations. Joseph was thrown into a pit and a prison before he sat on a throne. Jesus Himself spent 40 days alone in the wilderness before He began His public ministry. Isolation is not the evidence of God's absence. It is the proof of His preparation. Often we cry out to God for blessings, for influence, for greater platforms. But what we do not realize is that the weight of the blessing requires greater capacity. God will never give you a blessing that will destroy you. Therefore, in His mercy, He isolates you to stretch your soul, to strengthen your spirit, and to enlarge your capacity. He is building in you the stamina to withstand storms, the humility to handle honor, and the discernment to navigate destiny. In isolation, God is not just changing your surroundings. He is changing your mindset. He is pruning away the small thinking that would limit your impact. He is burning away the insecurities that would sabotage your calling. He is developing the disciplines that will sustain your future victories. Isolation forces you to confront your fears, to wrestle with your doubts, and to anchor yourself in the truth of who God says you are. You may feel hidden. You may feel forgotten. You may feel like everyone else is moving forward while you are standing still. But I declare to you today, you are not standing still. You are being rooted deeply. The taller the building, the deeper the foundation must go. The higher God intends to take you, the deeper He must first ground you. So do not despise the season of isolation. Do not curse the hidden place. It is not a grave, it is a womb. It is not the end, it is the beginning. It is not punishment, it is preparation. Isolation is preparation, not punishment. God isolates you not to punish you, but to prepare you, to strip away distractions and align your mind with His purpose. Before God elevates a person, He separates them. This is a profound principle, and it goes far beyond physical separation from people. In fact, true separation begins in the heart and mind. It's not only about moving away from certain people or places. It is about moving away from old mentalities, old habits, and environments that keep you bound to a lower level of existence. God knows that in order for you to rise, you must first detach from the mindset that limits you. Elevation is not just about a new position, a new title, or a new platform. It is about a new perspective. It's about the way you see the world, the way you see yourself, and the way you see God. Without this transformation of the mind, no amount of physical promotion will change your internal condition. In fact, external elevation without internal transformation only sets you up for failure. Look at the lives of great leaders in the Bible. Abraham was told by God to leave his family, his land, and his familiar surroundings. This wasn't just a physical separation. It was a mental and spiritual separation. God knew that Abraham could not fulfill the promise of becoming the father of many nations while his mind was still tied to his old life in Ur. He had to be separated from his past to step into his future. The same principle applied to Moses. Before he could lead the children of Israel out of Egypt, he had to be separated from Egypt. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Egypt represented slavery, defeat, and limitation. If Moses still carried the mindset of Egypt, he could never lead others into freedom. The same thing applies to us today. The environments we surround ourselves with often shape the way we think and live. If you continue to surround yourself with people who think small, live small, and dream small, you will inevitably be bound to the limitations of those same thoughts, those same beliefs. God in His wisdom calls us to separate ourselves, not just from people, but from the environments, habits, and mindsets that are holding us back. You see, God is a God of progress. He is always moving us forward, but moving forward requires a shedding of the old. If you are constantly looking back, constantly revisiting past relationships, past experiences, or old ways of thinking, you will find yourself stuck. When God calls you to greater things, He calls you to leave behind the things that no longer serve your destiny. Separation from the past is not a sign of God's rejection, but rather His divine wisdom. He is not just trying to remove you from certain people or places. He is removing the weight of your former life that would prevent you from running your race with endurance. Separation requires courage. It takes courage to leave what you know and step into the unknown. It takes courage to cut ties with relationships that drain you, hold you back, or define you by your past mistakes. It takes courage to challenge the way you think, to question your assumptions, and to break free from limiting beliefs. But this courage is not a courage you have to summon on your own. It comes from the understanding that God has called you to more. You are not just separating for the sake of separation, you are separating to elevate. You are stepping away from your past to step into your future. You are shedding the old garments to put on the new. The Apostle Paul understood this principle well. In Philippians 3:13-14, he says, "One thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." Paul had to separate from his past. His past as Saul of Tarsus, a persecutor of the church, in order to become the great Apostle Paul. His elevation came only after he was willing to let go of the old man and embrace the new identity God had for him. You cannot be elevated until you are willing to separate from the things that are beneath you. Sometimes the very people who were once meant to support you are now assigned to hold you back. Sometimes the very habits and environments you once thrived in are now holding you hostage to a former version of yourself. But God will not allow you to stay in a place of stagnation when He has called you to greater things. His call to separation is not to harm you, but to protect you from being stuck in a cycle of mediocrity. When you embrace separation, you position yourself for elevation. You give God the room to do the work in you that will allow you to handle the weight of the blessings He wants to give you. Elevation requires more than just a promotion in position. It requires a change in mindset, a change in the way you see yourself, and a change in how you approach your future. Before God elevates a person, He separates them not from people only, but from old mentalities, habits, and environments. Separation is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a new season of growth and preparation. If you have been called to a greater destiny, embrace the separation. It is God's way of positioning you for elevation. There is something profoundly important to understand when it comes to your journey toward greatness. Hidden seasons protect future influence. Many of us, especially in today's age of social media and instant gratification, have become obsessed with the idea of being seen and recognized. We long for visibility and often believe that the moment we have an idea or a vision, it should be broadcast to the world. But God knows that public exposure before private formation is a recipe for failure. He hides you in a season of obscurity, not to abandon you, but to protect the integrity of the purpose He has placed inside you. The world often elevates people based on their visibility, their talents, and their charisma. But God doesn't elevate based on what you show. He elevates based on what you have become. There is a difference between public recognition and private transformation. The private work that God does in you during your hidden season is what truly prepares you for the weight of the influence He intends to give you. Think about the story of David. Before he became a king, he was a shepherd boy in the fields, tending to sheep, in the quiet, lonely hills where no one could see him. He was hidden, but those hidden seasons were not wasted. While he was alone, God was shaping his heart. He was developing his courage, learning how to protect the sheep from predators, and learning how to worship in solitude. David's private devotion and preparation formed the foundation for his future public reign. He could not have faced Goliath, nor could he have led the people of Israel, had he not been developed in the hidden season of his life. Similarly, Joseph was hidden in the prison and the pit before he was promoted to a position of power in Egypt. Joseph's character, his ability to manage his emotions, and his perseverance through rejection and betrayal were all forged in the hidden seasons. Had he been exposed too early, the bitterness, the impatience, and the selfishness he struggled with could have corrupted his reign. It was through the hidden seasons that Joseph was refined, and when the time of promotion came, he had the integrity and wisdom to handle it. You see, God hides you to protect what He has placed in you. Your potential is far too valuable to be exposed prematurely. If your vision and your gifts are revealed too soon, the pressures and the challenges of public exposure can ruin you. The world is not kind to people who rise too quickly without having the depth to sustain their success. That's why God often keeps His greatest treasures in the dark, because He's ensuring they grow in strength before they shine. God does not want His purposes for your life to be crushed under the weight of your own inadequacies. That's why He chooses to hide you until you have been properly formed, until you can handle the blessings He's preparing for you. You may be wondering why God has allowed you to remain in a place of obscurity for so long, why your efforts seem unnoticed, why others around you are being elevated while you seem to be stuck. But I encourage you to see this hidden season as a gift, not a curse. It's God's protection over your future influence. He is not punishing you. He is preparing you. He is guarding your heart, your mind, and your character so that when the time comes for you to step into your destiny. We live in a world that glorifies instant success. We see people rise to fame overnight thanks to social media, and sometimes we wonder why our journey seems so slow. But the danger of instant exposure is that it often lacks depth. Real influence is not built in a moment. It is built over time. It is formed in hidden seasons of learning, humility, failure, and growth. Real influence is forged in the fire of obscurity, where the only audience you have is God, and your only reward is knowing that you are becoming who He has called you to be. Think of Jesus. He spent 30 years of His life in relative obscurity, hidden away in Nazareth. For the first 30 years, He was not performing miracles or preaching to crowds. He was growing, learning, and preparing in private. His public ministry did not begin until he was fully formed, and even then he spent years in ministry before his final sacrifice. Jesus knew that to carry the weight of the world's sins, he first had to be prepared in the hidden places of his life. The same applies to you. God is preparing you in the hidden seasons, the things you are learning now, the struggles you are enduring now, the quiet faithfulness you are exhibiting in your private life are all part of God's plan to protect your future influence. If you are faithful in the hidden seasons, God will reward you with the platform, the influence, and the opportunity to impact others in ways you cannot yet imagine. So, trust the process. Do not despise the hidden seasons. Do not rush the preparation. God is not delaying your promotion. He is ensuring that you are ready for it. He is protecting the integrity of your purpose by keeping you hidden until you are strong enough to handle the responsibility that comes with the influence you seek. God hides you to protect the integrity of the assignment you placed inside you. Public exposure before private formation leads to public failure. There is a powerful truth that we often overlook in our journey. Isolation reveals identity. We live in a world where titles, positions, and external validation can define who we are. We often define ourselves by what we do, what we have, and what people say about us. But God, in His infinite wisdom, sometimes allows us to experience isolation, a season where all the things we cling to for identity are stripped away. In that place of solitude, we are confronted with the most important question of all. Who are you really? You see, when you're surrounded by the crowd, it's easy to become caught up in the expectations and perceptions of others. The applause, the titles, the roles you play in life can quickly become the mask you wear, making you forget who you truly are. We can get so caught up in titles, the title of mother, father, leader, boss, minister, that we lose sight of the fact that these are merely roles, not the essence of who we are. Your identity is not found in your profession, your accolades, or your accomplishments. It is found in the quiet moments when there are no titles, no stages, and no applause. The danger, however, is that we often run from isolation. We fear the loneliness that comes with being alone, away from the noise and the crowd. But this is the very place where God meets you. This is where God does His deepest work. When you are isolated, stripped of the outer layers, you are left with your true self. And in that place, you are forced to confront who you are in the eyes of God. Not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to be, but who you are in His. In isolation, God peels away the masks, the titles, and the facades that we wear to hide our vulnerabilities. Without the distractions of the world around you, you are forced to deal with the reality of who you truly are. And this can be a painful process because in isolation you see your flaws, your weaknesses, and your insecurities. But it is in this raw, unfiltered state that God has the opportunity to speak to you and redefine your identity. You may have identified yourself by your past mistakes, by the things people have said about you, or by the labels the world has placed on you. But God does not see you that way. He sees you according to your purpose, according to the divine blueprint He placed within you before the foundations of the world. When Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River, He was revealed to the world as the Son of God. Yet immediately after that, He was led into the wilderness, a place of isolation. For 40 days He was alone, fasting and praying. In that wilderness, the enemy came to tempt Him, attempting to make Him question His identity. If you are the Son of God, the devil said. This was not a new question. It was the same question God had already affirmed at His baptism. But in the wilderness, isolated from the crowds, from the accolades, from the affirmations of men, Jesus was forced to face the truth of who He was. Not because of what others said about Him, but because of what God had already declared over Him. His identity was secure in the Father's love. And it was in isolation that He was able to stand firm in that truth. It is in the quiet, isolated places where we are no longer defined by external circumstances that we begin to understand who we really are in God. In these times, God speaks to our hearts, calling us into a deeper understanding of our divine purpose. He reveals our strengths and weaknesses, but more importantly, He reveals our worth. When you're alone, with no audience, no applause, and no roles to play, you are left with one thing: yourself. And it is in that rawness, that authenticity, that God reveals the truth about who you are and who He created you to be. Isolation brings clarity. It strips away the noise and distractions that clutter our minds and hearts, allowing us to hear God's voice more clearly. This is where we come face to face with our true identity. It is not defined by your successes or failures, your relationships or positions. It is defined by the fact that you are a beloved child of God, made in His image and called to fulfill a specific purpose. Look at Moses. Before he could lead the people of Israel, he had to spend 40 years in the wilderness. He had to leave Egypt, a place where he had been a prince, a place where his identity had been shaped by his position and power. But in the wilderness, God did not just separate him from the people. He separated Moses from the man he used to be. In that isolation, Moses' true identity as God's servant was revealed. It was there that God showed him His divine purpose, not as a prince of Egypt, but as the deliverer of Israel. You see, isolation is a divine reset. It is a place where you shed your old identity and are remade into the person God intended you to be. And as painful as it may seem, isolation is not a punishment, it is a gift. It is in that place that you discover who you are, not based on the opinions of others, not based on your titles or achievements, but based on the truth of who God says you are. When you're alone, stripped of titles, positions, and applause, you come face to face with your true self and with God's definition of you. Many people desire blessings, and rightfully so. We all long for breakthroughs, for prosperity, for success. But it's important to understand this profound truth. True blessings require capacity, not just desire. We often confuse blessings with events or sudden windfalls, thinking they are moments of favor that arrive without warning. But in reality, blessings are not merely events. They are responsibility. To be truly blessed by God is not just to receive something. It is to be entrusted with something. Something that demands not only your desire, but also your capacity to manage, sustain, and grow. If you've ever prayed for greater blessings, more influence, or a larger platform, you've probably noticed that God doesn't always give those things immediately. And the reason for that is simple. God knows that true blessings come with weight. They come with responsibility. The greater the blessing, the greater the capacity required to carry it. This is why God often prepares us in seasons of isolation. He is building the capacity within us to handle the blessings He has for us. When God called Abraham to be the father of many nations, He didn't just give him a promise and expect it to happen overnight. Abraham's journey was long and filled with challenges. The promises God gave him were big, but so were the responsibilities that came with those promises. Abraham's ability to carry the blessing required a deep internal strength. A strength that was developed over time, not in moments of comfort, but in seasons of waiting, trusting, and growing. Abraham's heart, character, and faith had to be stretched to hold the fullness of the blessing God wanted to pour out on him. The same principle applies to all of us. We often look at the blessings others have received, their success, their wealth, their influence, and we think to ourselves, if only I had what they have, life would be so much easier. But what we fail to realize is that with those blessings come responsibilities and burdens that are often unseen. The public appearance of blessing may look easy, but it is the internal strength, the capacity built through seasons of isolation and preparation that allows one to bear it without being crushed. This is why God doesn't give us the blessings we desire immediately. He is first concerned with building our capacity to handle them. He doesn't want to bless us in such a way that the blessing destroys us. For example, if God were to give you a platform of influence before you were ready, the weight of that influence might overwhelm you. It might cause you to act out of pride, to be distracted by the praise of men, or to crumble under the pressure of constantly needing to perform. Without the proper capacity, the blessing would be more of a curse than a gift. When we go through periods of isolation, God is doing more than just keeping us hidden. He is strengthening our inner man, preparing us to hold the weight of the favor He intends to release into our lives. It is in these seasons of obscurity that God works on our character, our patience, our resilience, and our humility. These are the qualities that will help us handle blessings without being overwhelmed by them. Without capacity, even the greatest of blessings will be too heavy to carry. Consider the life of Joseph. Joseph was given a dream at a young age, a dream of ruling over his family and becoming a man of influence. But before that blessing could manifest, Joseph had to undergo years of testing. He was betrayed, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. Through it all, God was building Joseph's capacity. By the time Joseph rose to a position of power in Egypt, he had the wisdom, humility, and understanding to manage not only his own life, but the lives of an entire nation. His blessing was not just an event. It was the result of years of preparation, of God building his inner strength and resilience. Similarly, look at the story of David. Before David was anointed king, he was a shepherd boy in the fields, hidden from the world. He learned to protect his sheep from predators, and he developed a heart of worship. But when David was anointed king, that blessing came with enormous responsibility. He had to lead a nation, deal with betrayal, and navigate the complexities of power. Without the capacity developed in those hidden years, David would not have been able to carry the weight of his kingship. The blessing was not just about the crown. It was about the responsibility that came with it. You see, the desire for blessings is not enough. God is not concerned with how badly you want something. He is concerned with how ready you are to receive and steward it. True blessings require a capacity to manage and multiply them. It's not just about being able to receive something, but about being able to manage the weight of that blessing with integrity, wisdom, and responsibility. God knows that your character and your internal strength must be formed before the external blessings can be entrusted to you. So, He will often allow you to go through seasons of preparation, seasons where you may feel isolated, where you may not see the results you desire, but where God is strengthening your inner man. He is increasing your capacity to carry the blessings, the responsibilities, and the influence He has for you. If you are in a season of waiting, a season of isolation, or a season of preparation, do not despise it. God is not withholding your blessings. He is building your capacity. He is preparing you for the responsibility that comes with the favor He wants to release in your life. True blessings are not just events. They are responsibilities. Isolation builds your inner strength to carry the weight of favor without being crushed by it. There is a profound truth that often challenges our understanding of God's ways. God cuts to connect. At first glance, this may seem paradoxical. Why would God, who desires to bless and prosper us, allow relationships, opportunities, and comforts to be taken away? Why would He cut us off from things and people that we have come to depend on? The answer lies in the fact that God does not cut things away to harm us, but to connect us to something far greater. Sometimes, He must remove certain things from our lives to position us for the divine appointment and destiny He has called us to fulfill. Throughout Scripture, we see examples of God cutting away in order to create space for a greater connection. In John 15:2, Jesus speaks of the vine and the branches, saying, He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit He prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. Here we see that God cuts not as a punishment, but as a necessary process for growth. If we are to bear more fruit, we must first be pruned. The pruning process often involves cutting away what is unnecessary, unhealthy, or distracting, so that we can become more aligned with God's divine purpose for our lives. This cutting, though painful, is always with the goal of connection to a higher calling, to a divine assignment, and to the people, places, and opportunities that will help us fulfill our purpose. The relationships, opportunities, and comforts that God removes are not always inherently bad. In fact, some of them may have been good in their time, but if they are holding us back from our destiny, if they are keeping us tied to a lower level of life, then God in His wisdom will allow them to be cut away. This is not a rejection, but a redirection. God is redirecting our path toward His perfect will. Look at the life of Abraham. God told him to leave his homeland, his family, and everything familiar to him, and go to a land He would show him. This was a profound cutting. Abraham had to leave behind relationships, comfort zones, and the security of what he knew. But God did this not to harm Abraham, but to connect him to a greater promise, the promise of being the father of many nations. Abraham's obedience to the cutting process was a necessary step in fulfilling his divine destiny. If he had stayed where he was, if he had clung to what was comfortable, he would never have encountered the fullness of God's blessings. Similarly, think about the story of Moses. Before God could use Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he had to go through a process of isolation and separation. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, far from the palace, far from the people who knew him as a prince of Egypt. During that time, God was cutting away the pride, the ambition, and the identity that Moses had built for himself. God had to remove him from his comfort zone to prepare him for the greatness He had called him to. It was in the wilderness, away from the distractions of Egypt, that Moses encountered God in the burning bush. It was there that Moses received his divine calling to lead God's people. Had Moses remained in Egypt, clinging to his former identity, he would not have been able to connect with the destiny God had for him. The same principle applies to us. There are times when God allows relationships to fade away, when opportunities close, or when we are taken out of our comfort zones. It is easy to become discouraged when these things happen, but we must remember that God's ways are higher than our ways. His cuts are not meant to harm us. They are meant to connect us to the divine appointments, the people, and the opportunities that are in alignment with our true purpose. It's important to understand that God's cuts are not random. They are strategic. He is a God of purpose, and every cut He makes is intentional. Every relationship He removes, every opportunity He takes away, and every comfort zone He disrupts is part of a divine plan to position us for something greater. Sometimes we hold on to things and people because they are familiar, or because they give us a sense of security. But God knows that these things can become crutches, preventing us from stepping into the fullness of what He has prepared for us. His cuts are acts of love, as He knows that we cannot fully walk in our destiny if we are still clinging to the things that are holding us back. Consider the story of Ruth. Ruth was a widow, and she had to leave her homeland and everything familiar to her when she decided to follow her mother-in-law Naomi to Bethlehem. This was a significant cutting for Ruth. She was leaving behind her family, her culture, and her way of life. But in that moment of cutting, God was connecting her to her divine destiny. Ruth met Boaz in Bethlehem, and through that union, she became part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. If she had stayed in Moab, clinging to what was familiar, she would have missed the divine connection that God had planned for her. God cuts to connect. He cuts away what is temporary and superficial to bring us into alignment with His eternal purpose for our lives. The relationships, opportunities, and comforts we hold so dearly are often the very things that keep us from stepping into the fullness of our destiny. But when we trust God's process, when we embrace the cuts, we position ourselves to be connected to something far greater, something that will enable us to fulfill the divine purpose He has designed for us. Remember, every cut has a divine purpose, and every connection that follows is a step closer to fulfilling your destiny. Trust the process and allow God to cut away what no longer serves His purpose for your life. He's not taking away to harm you. He's removing to connect you to the greater things He has in store. In conclusion, beloved, understand this. God's ways are not our ways, but His ways are always perfect. The seasons of isolation, the cuts, the separations, and the waiting are not signs of abandonment, but divine processes of preparation. God isolates you not to punish you, but to prepare you for the greatness He has planned. He separates you not to reject you, but to elevate your mind, your heart, and your capacity to carry the blessing He is about to release into your life. He hides you, not to forget you, but to protect the very integrity of your calling. He cuts you, not to harm you, but to connect you to a destiny that is far greater than you can imagine. Remember, true blessings are not events, they are responsibilities. True elevation requires true preparation, and preparation often comes in seasons of solitude. You must be strengthened in the quiet, refined in the hidden places, and shaped in isolation before you can handle the magnitude of the blessings God has set aside for you. It is through these processes, the isolation, the pruning, the cutting, that God is building your capacity. He is expanding your potential to not only receive the blessing, but to carry it, steward it, and multiply it for His glory. Trust the process, even when you do not understand it. Your identity will be revealed in the quiet moments of isolation, and your capacity will be stretched through the cuts and the separations. When God isolates you, He is not abandoning you, He is preparing you. When He cuts, He is not rejecting you, He is connecting you to something far greater. And in all of this, He is shaping you into the person He has called you to be. The person who will not just receive the blessing, but will be a conduit of blessing to others. You are not alone in your journey. God is with you every step of the way, orchestrating every season, every cut, and every isolation for your ultimate good and His divine purpose. Embrace the isolation, embrace the cutting, for they are the preparation for the blessing. You are being made ready for the greatness that is about to manifest in your life. So take heart and remain steadfast, for the best is yet to come. The blessing, the destiny, the divine connection, it is all unfolding in God's perfect timing. Keep your heart aligned with His purpose, and trust that everything God has allowed to be taken away is making room for something far greater. Your isolation is preparation, your separation is elevation, and your cutting is connection. God is working in you, and He's about to do something great through you.